Hey guys, tonight you find yourself. You stand beneath a low winter sky on the southern road toward London, with mud gripping your boots, river mist curling between bare hedges, and the breath of tired horses drifting white in the cold air. Ahead, the city wall rises through the gloom, dark with damp and patched with age, while torchlight trembles around the gate like small orange stars. Bells sound somewhere beyond the rooftops, slow and distant, marking an hour that no one bothers to explain to you. Smoke gathers in the rafters of the gatehouse. Damp straw clings to wagon wheels, cold stone presses its chill through every glove and sleeve. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You probably would not last a week out here without losing a boot, catching a fever, or offending someone whose hat quietly announces a rank you failed to notice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the road narrows toward the gate, leave a comment with where you are listening from and what the local time is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You join the line of carts waiting beneath the arch, each one creaking forward by the width of a hand before stopping again. London is close enough now that you can smell it before you fully see it. The scent comes in layers. First, there is wood smoke, then horse sweat, then wet wool, then the sour breath of ale, then the river dark and tidal, carrying mudfish scales, rotting weeds, and whatever the city has decided it no longer wishes to keep. The gate does not resemble the clean stone entrance painted in later pictures. It looks repaired, crowded, and tired. Timber braces press against old masonry, and iron hinges stain the wall. A small shrine occupies a recess where a painted saint watches the traffic through candle smoke. Someone has left rosemary and a bent coin beneath the image. No one can quite agree whether the saint protects travellers from robbers' fever or merely bad-tempered gatekeepers, but several people touch 2 fingers to their brow as they pass. You do the same. It seems wise not to test the matter. A clerk in a fur-edged cap stands near a narrow table collecting tolls beneath a canvas awning. His fingers are red from cold, though his ink remains miraculously unfrozen. He asks where the wagon has come from, what it carries, and whether the sacks are grain wool or something more taxable. Every answer seems to lead toward another question. The driver beside you swears under his breath that the same goods were counted at the last town, but he still produces a few coins. Tudor administration, you quickly discover, can find you even in the fog. The city beyond the gate is not one grand avenue, but a confusion of lanes pressing inward. Houses lean over the street as though trying to hear one another. Upper floors jut so far forward that neighbours might almost shake hands from opposite windows. Painted signs swing above doorways, a crowned boot, a red lion, a gilded key, a fish with an expression of profound regret. Many people cannot read, so a picture tells them where ale is sold, where shoes are mended, where cloth is dyed, or where a bed may possibly contain fewer fleas than the one next door. You step carefully over a gutter running down the centre of the lane. It is neither deep nor discreet. Rainwater kitchen slops, stable, run-off cabbage leaves, broken rushes, and the occasional object you decide not to identify all travel together toward the river. A woman empties a basin from an upper window only after shouting a warning. The warning is generous. The timing is less so. You move closer to the wall. This is the London of Tudor rule, but it does not yet feel like the polished stage of kings, queens, and velvet sleeves. It feels like a living machine made from timber stone, smoke noise, and human shoulders. Porters bend beneath bales of wool. Apprentices hurry between shops with baskets tucked under their arms. A butcher's boy scrapes a wooden board while a dog waits beneath it with absolute faith in the future. Two women argue over the price of onions. A priest gathers his cloak away from the mud and fails to gather it quite enough. Above the street, church towers break the line of roofs. Their bells organize the day more reliably than clocks calling people to prayer, warning of fire marking funerals, announcing feast days, and sometimes simply reminding everyone that the parish owns a bell large enough to be heard. The sound rolls between the houses and seems to press the city into one body. You pass beneath a black boar sign into a warmer lane where bakers draw the final loaves from communal ovens. Bread is the centre of the meal, making pottage filling and ale tolerable. Labourers eat coarse loaves made from rye, barley, peas, or whatever grain the harvest allows, while fine white wheat bread belongs to wealthier tables. Near the oven, flat wooden boards and thick slices of stale bread serve as trenchers for stew or meat. The poorest diner may simply eat the trencher afterward, an efficient custom, provided you do not become attached to the tableware. You continue north, though direction becomes uncertain within minutes. Streets twist around property lines older than memory. Alleys narrow without warning. Passageways vanish beneath buildings. Some doors are marked by bunches of herbs meant to sweeten the air or ward off sickness. Rue, rosemary, juniper, and lavender hang drying from beams. People believe strong scents can defend the body against corrupt air. Physicians speak of humours and imbalance, while grandmothers speak of onions in the room iron near the cradle or a charm sewn into a child's clothing. Even now it is hard to tell whether some remedies survive because they help, because they comfort, or because no one wishes to insult the aunt who prescribed them. At a crossroads you pause beside a stone conduit where servants fill buckets and balance pails from shoulder yokes. Clean water takes work. It must be carried heated and used with purpose. People wash faces and hands, rinse mouths, and scrub linens, though water is never taken for granted. The belief that everyone wanders happily unwashed is as misleading as the belief that everyone smells of roses. A gust pushes smoke down the lane, and your eyes begin to water. Chimneys exist, but many hearths still send smoke through imperfect flues or simple openings. Soot coats, beams, walls, clothing lungs, and patience. Inside one open-fronted shop, an elderly man works by candlelight despite the early evening. Beeswax candles burn cleaner and sweeter than tallow, but they cost more. Tallow candles made from animal fat smoke gutter and occasionally smell as though the animal has returned to complain. The man is a scrivener, his fingers stained with ink. Tudor England is often imagined as a place ruled by swords and royal tempers, yet much of it is ruled by writing. Licenses, wills, fines, petitions, inventories, proclamations, and court records multiply quietly. A command becomes real because someone copies it, seals it, carries it through rain, and reads it aloud. You watch him sharpen a quill. Perhaps he records a merchant's agreement, a widow's claim, or a complaint about a neighbour's pig. Those who tell the tale never fully agree which documents truly shape history, but the city seems to run on all of them. The lane opens into a market space where stalls are being covered for the night. Cloth merchants fold woolens dyed in russet madder, red, dull blue and green. The colours are richer than the brown-grey world often imagined, though repeated wear and winter mud soften every shade. A seller counts pewter spoons. Another locks spices inside a chest with 2 iron keys. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg carry the scent of distant trade, but their price keeps them far from the common pot. Near the edge of the square, a fishwife salts the last of her stock. Eels twist in a tub beside her. Smoked herring hangs from a beam. On fast days, when church custom limits meat fish, becomes especially important, and the definition of fish can become surprisingly generous. Some people count certain water-dwelling animals in ways that make theologians useful at dinner. Medieval and Tudor kitchens are nothing if not inventive when rules approach the appetite. You stand beneath the awning of a closed stall while sleet begins to tick against the boards. Across the square, an official reads a proclamation to a small crowd. His voice rises and falls, but the wind carries away half the words. The king's authority is present, certainly, yet it reaches people through weather-distance memory and local interpretation. A royal order may leave Westminster in perfect language and arrive in a parish several days later as something less perfect, repeated by a clerk whose boots are soaked and whose audience is thinking about supper. The crowd disperses before the reading is finished. You follow them toward a smaller street where an ale-house door spills warmth onto the stones. Inside, rushes cover the floor. Fresh rushes smell green and clean when laid down, often mixed with herbs. But old rushes hold crumbs, mud ash, spilled drink, and the secret history of many shoes. A fire burns low beneath soot-black rafters, steam rises from cloaks, wooden cups pass from hand to hand. You sit at the edge of a bench and receive a bowl of pottage, thick with peas, onions, oats, and a little bacon fat. The bowl is wooden, the spoon smooth from years of use, the bread coarse enough to challenge the teeth, but warm enough to be forgiven. Ale is safer and more dependable than many water sources, though it varies in strength. Small ale can be weak enough for daily drinking. It is food, drink, and consolation in one cup. Conversation moves around you in low waves. A carter complains about tolls. A widow asks whether a room is available upstairs. Two apprentices whisper about a public punishment expected in the morning. A man in a wool cap insists that the winter will be severe because geese flew early. Another says the moon looked wrong 3 nights ago. Some swear that ringing church bells can break storms or turn away dangerous weather, though the bell ringer, who must climb the tower in lightning, may hold a less poetic view. You warm your hands around the cup and listen. The city is crowded, but not anonymous. Parish, guild, household, trade, and neighbourhood bind people tightly. Everyone seems to know who owes money, who waters the ale, who missed church, who has a sick child, and who keeps too many chickens behind an inadequate fence. Privacy exists mostly as a hopeful idea. A person's reputation can travel faster than a horse and arrive in better condition. Outside, darkness gathers fully. Watchmen begin their rounds with lanterns and staffs. Gates will close. Fires must be covered carefully because flame is one of the city's oldest fears. Timber houses stand close roofs, nearly touching workshops packed with straw, oil, wood shavings, charcoal, and cloth. A single careless spark can travel farther than a royal messenger. You leave the alehouse and step once more into the cold. The half-burned candle near the door gutters behind you. A small dog with one torn ear appears from beneath a cart and begins to follow at a respectful distance. You do not feed it, but it has already decided that you are promising. The street climbs toward taller buildings and distant torchlight. Somewhere beyond them are halls where nobles dine beneath painted cloths. Chambers where officials draft orders and palaces where royal splendour is arranged with great care. Yet from here, at boot level, Tudor England is not a golden portrait. It is wet wool drying by a fire. It is market tolls counted in cold fingers. It is pottage scraped from a bowl. It is bells above crowded roofs and mud beneath every fine procession. The splendid surface exists, but it rests on thousands of ordinary backs. You walk on slowly with the dog behind you, and the bells fading through the mist while London closes its gates against the winter night. The bells fade behind you as the street rises, and the little dog continues at your heels with the solemn patience of a minor official awaiting promotion. Ahead, torchlight gathers against a broader gate where liveried servants hurry beneath carved stone and painted shields. The palace does not appear all at once. It reveals itself in walls, courtyards, chimneys, covered passages, and windows glowing through horn panes, each part added by some earlier lord who apparently distrusted straight lines. You fall in beside two royal messengers carrying leather satchels. Their boots are worse than yours. One bears a sealed packet close beneath his cloak, while the other guards a bundle of folded papers tied with ribbon. Neither resembles a shining herald from a tapestry. They look cold, hungry, and anxious about arriving before a clerk goes to bed. At the outer court, guards inspect seals, names, and purposes. An iron key turns inside an oak door. Beyond it, the air changes. There is more beeswax, more roasted meat, more damp fur, and less freedom to stand wherever you please. Servants move everywhere, pages carry candles, kitchen boys shoulder baskets, laundresses cross the yard with folded linen under wool covers. Grooms lead steaming horses toward the stables. A yeoman of the wardrobe argues over missing gloves, and a chamber servant counts silver cups twice because losing one may cost more than his yearly wages. Royal magnificence, you discover, requires an army of people who must polish it before dawn. The king is not visible yet. His presence fills every corridor. His initials appear on carved panels. His badges decorate cloth hangings. His arms shine above doorways. Even the firewood seems stacked in a manner intended to suggest authority. Power here is partly command and partly scenery. You follow the messengers into a waiting chamber strewn with fresh rushes and sweet herbs. A clerk sits behind a table covered in warrants, petitions, household accounts, and drafts marked with corrections. His fingers are ink-stained, and his expression suggests that England has personally inconvenienced him. He checks the seals, enters names into a register, and asks whether the road from Kent is passable. No one can quite agree whether the king reads every paper issued in his name. Some swear he studies important documents carefully. Others whisper that trusted ministers shape the language before it reaches him. Either way, the parchment carries royal force once the proper hands have written, reviewed, sealed, copied, and delivered it. A young clerk warms sealing wax near a candle. Another sands fresh ink to dry it. A third searches desperately for a document that is discovered beneath his own sleeve. Government, it seems, is majestic from a distance and mildly panicked at arm's length. You wait near a wall painted with hunting scenes. Deer leap forever between green trees while real courtiers drift through the room wrapped in fur-lined cloaks. They speak softly, yet every pause feels deliberate. News travels here through letters. Servants, merchants, confessors, relatives, and people who claim to have overheard, people who certainly should not have been speaking. Rumour is a kind of palace, as a weather. It changes without warning and enters beneath every door. One courtier believes a foreign envoy has brought an offer of marriage. Another insists the treasury is emptier than anyone admits. A third says the king laughed during supper, which is treated as political information. The meaning of a royal smile may occupy more minds than the price of grain, though grain remains more useful. You are led onward through a gallery where portraits hang beneath gilded borders. The painted king stands broad, still and certain, his clothing heavy with jewels. The image does not show aching joints, sleepless nights, worried physicians, unpaid bills, or the difficulty of keeping several hundred hungry people fed. Portraits are not windows, they are announcements. In a side chamber, household officers examine accounts for bread, ale, candles, fodder, fish, spices, coal cloth, and repairs. The numbers run down the pages like disciplined soldiers. A palace consumes constantly. Kitchens burn wood from before sunrise. Horses eat whether diplomacy succeeds or fails. Guests expect gifts. Servants expect wages eventually. Ceremonies require fabric, plate, music, food, and patience. Debt hides beneath the velvet. The crown possesses land rights, taxes, fines, customs duties, and loans. Yet expenses swell with war-building, travel display, and reward. A king must appear generous even when generosity strains the purse. Gold plate may be displayed at a feast, then quietly pledged later. Jewels may signify permanence while accountants negotiate delays. Even now it is hard to tell whether splendor convinces foreign ambassadors, reassures subjects, or reassures the court itself. You enter a great hall where preparations continue for supper. Trestle tables are raised, white cloths are spread. Salt is placed according to rank. The higher guests will sit nearer the royal presence, while lesser diners settle farther away. Position turns architecture into politics. Musicians tune softly in a gallery. A servant tests a chair cushion with grave attention. Another replaces a smoking tallow candle with beeswax before an important doorway. The difference in smell is immediate. Majesty, among other things, is the ability to move unpleasant odors elsewhere. A suspicious monk passes, carrying a small reliquary wrapped in cloth. You recognize him from nowhere, yet he looks as though he recognizes everyone. Some say relics brought near the king may protect health or strengthen oaths. Others suspect that certain bones have multiplied across Christendom with remarkable enthusiasm. The monk disappears through a side door before certainty can catch him. At last a stir moves through the hall. Backs straighten. Voices lower. Servants step into place. You glimpse only the edge of a procession, rich cloth, polished metal, torch flame, and faces arranged into calm obedience. The king passes beyond your sight almost immediately. What remains is the machinery behind him. Clerks gather papers, messengers prepare to ride, servants lift platters, guards close doors. Courtiers begin interpreting what they barely saw. The painted majesty depends on all of them on ink and rumour, borrowed money, and warm food, clean linen, and controlled distance. You leave the hall as supper bells sound, carrying with you the quiet knowledge that royal power is strongest when no one sees how carefully it must be carried. The supper bells continue behind you as a chamber servant leads you along a passage where the torchlight thins and the painted grandeur begins to fade. The walls are stone here, damp at the joints and cold enough to draw heat through your sleeve when you brush against them. A narrow window admits a blade of winter air. Someone has stuffed wool into the frame, but the wind has found the remaining gap and whistles through it with the persistence of a tax collector. Instead, warmth exists in islands. A fire blazes in one chamber while the next remains bitterly cold. Doors open and close constantly. Servants carry embers in covered pans, haul logs through courtyards, and arrange screens to keep drafts from important bodies. The king may command a kingdom, but he cannot command winter to respect a doorway. The servant brings you into a withdrawing room, where rushes cover the floor beneath woven mats. Fresh rosemary and sweet flag have been scattered among them to soften the smell. Near the hearth, two gentlemen warm their hands beneath fur-lined sleeves while pretending they are not cold. Their dignity depends upon this silence. A carved chair stands near the fire, its back protected by a heavy cloth. Rank decides who may sit closest to the flames, who waits near the edge, and who remains standing. Heat itself follows hierarchy. A lesser servant feeds the hearth and receives none of its comfort unless everyone above him has left. You move onward into a bedchamber larger than many cottages. The bed rises behind curtains of wool and embroidered fabric, forming a smaller room within the room. Its curtains trap body heat block drafts and offer a degree of privacy. In a household where privacy is always incomplete, beneath the mattress lie ropes stretched across a wooden frame. They must be tightened from time to time, or the sleeper sinks towards the center like a ship settling into a calm harbor. The blankets are thick, but dampness clings to them. A warming pan waits beside the hearth, ready to be filled with hot coals and passed between the sheets. Used carelessly, it can scorch cloth or start a fire. Used correctly, it may turn a frozen bed into a merely suspicious one. A chamber pot rests behind a screen. Close stools, basins, cloths, scented water, and servants all help maintain noble comfort, though none removes the basic inconvenience of living before indoor plumbing. No one can quite agree whether royal apartments smell chiefly of smoke, perfume, damp cloth, or humanity. The answer is probably all four, changing with the hour. From the chamber you descend towards the kitchens, following warmth, clatter, and the smell of fat. The great kitchen is not a peaceful room. Fires burn beneath iron pots, spits turn before open flames, steam rises from cauldrons. Boys carry wood scullions, scrub vessels, and cooks shout instructions without needing to raise their voices much, because everyone already expects trouble. The floor is slick in places. Ash floats through the air. Hooks, ladles, knives, baskets, and drying herbs cover the walls. A pot of pottage bubbles beside sauces meant for finer tables. Meat roasts for those permitted to eat it, while fish is prepared for anyone observing a fast day or attempting to look especially devout before supper. A turnspit dog trots inside a wooden wheel fixed near the hearth, powering a mechanism that rotates meat over the fire. The animal works steadily, encouraged by scraps and habit. It glances at you with the tired wisdom of someone who understands palace employment better than you do. Kitchen servants taste sauces using bits of bread. Spices are measured carefully, not merely to hide spoiled food, as later stories often claim, but to display wealth and create flavors prized at court. Cinnamon, ginger, pepper, cloves, saffron, sugar, and vinegar combine in ways both rich and sharp. Food can be sweet and savory at once, with color used as part of the spectacle. One cook dyes a dish yellow with saffron, another prepares a green sauce from herbs. A third shapes pastry around a filling that will emerge beneath candlelight, looking more architectural than edible. Royal dining is theatre, and the kitchen builds the scenery. Yet even here, abundance is uncertain. Supplies depend upon roads, weather, river traffic, markets, household officers, and money. A delayed wagon means less flour. Spoiled fish means an altered menu. Wet firewood smokes. A sick cook leaves work for 3 others. Magnificence survives by constant adjustment. You pass a pantry where bread is counted, then a buttery where ale and wine are stored. The word buttery comes from butts, the large barrels holding drink, rather than from mountains of butter, a disappointment to several imaginary guests. Keys hang from an officer's belt because theft is expected wherever food is plentiful and wages are late. Nearby, silver plate is washed, dried, counted, and locked away. Fine diners receive better bread, better cups, better light, and perhaps cleaner air. Those below stairs receive what remains, though what remains in a royal household may still exceed a villager's feast. You climb again through a servant's stair, narrower and darker than the ceremonial route. The stone steps are hollowed by generations of feet. At a landing you find a maid sleeping upright beside a basket of linen, her head against the wall. She wakes when the little dog sniffs her shoe, mutters a blessing, and continues upward without complaint. The dog has somehow entered the palace. No guard has challenged it. Perhaps confidence is the finest livery. In another corridor, wet cloaks hang near a brazier. Wax drips from sconces. A tapestry stirs in the draught, revealing bare wall behind it. You realize that much of palace comfort is concealment cloth over stone perfume, over smoke ceremony, over fatigue, music over kitchen noise, gold over debt, and rank over cold hands. You return toward the hall where guests dine beneath bright candles and painted beams. From their seats, the palace appears warm, ordered, and secure. Behind the doors, servants feed fires, tighten ropes, carry water, empty pots, chase smoke, and count every loaf. Royal comfort is real, but it is never effortless. It must be built again each morning and guarded through every winter night. The hall remains bright behind you, but the passage ahead grows quieter, lined with doors that lead toward apartments where rank marriage prayer and danger sleep beneath embroidered canopies. No. The little dog pauses at the threshold, sneezes at a cloud of incense, and decides that queens are probably less interesting than kitchens. You continue without him. A lady-in-waiting guides you past a chamber where women stitch by candlelight. Needles flash between fingers. Linen, silk, and wool lie folded in careful stacks. One woman copies a prayer into a small book, another sorts ribbons by colour. Their work appears gentle, yet the room is full of listening. At court, every marriage, illness, letter, and glance may carry consequence. The first queen you hear spoken of is Catherine of Aragon, remembered too often only as the wife set aside. Yet in these rooms her presence stretches across decades. You see Spanish embroidery worked into altar cloths, devotional books marked by use, and servants who still speak of her discipline. She acts as regent when the king campaigns abroad. She receives ambassadors, manages households, supports learning, and understands ceremony as a language of power. Some swear that her courage at Flodden becomes greater with each retelling. No one can quite agree how directly she shapes the victory, but no one doubts that she knows how to appear steady when the realm expects uncertainty. You pass a chapel where candles burn before a painted Virgin. Catherine's piety is not a decorative habit. It orders her days, informs her choices, and strengthens her refusal to accept that her marriage is invalid. To dismiss her as merely stubborn is to miss the world she inhabits, where salvation, legitimacy, marriage, and duty are woven too tightly to separate. Beyond the chapel, conversation turns to Anne Boleyn. Later stories make her a temptress, a schemer, a victim, or a villain, depending on who holds the pen. Here, she appears first as a sharp-minded courtwoman shaped by years abroad. She reads French religious works, understands fashion, performs music, and knows how patronage can move ideas through a household. A lady unfolds a sleeve in the French style and murmurs that half the court imitates whatever Anne wears. Clothing is never merely clothing here. A hood, a jewel, a colour, or a badge announces allegiance before anyone speaks. Anne's rise depends upon charm, certainly, but also upon intelligence, family networks, religious interest, and the king's determination. Her fall is equally crowded with politics. Even now it is hard to tell which accusations are believed, which are invented, and which are accepted, because refusing them is dangerous. The court keeps its voice low when her name appears. You enter a smaller room where a cradle stands beneath a carved canopy. It reminds you that queens are judged by pregnancies, births, and losses more harshly than by diplomacy or learning. The pressure is relentless. Herbal drinks, saints' girdles, relics, prayers, charms, and careful diets gather around royal motherhood. Some women wear amulets during labour. Others place written prayers near the bed. Hope is treated with every remedy available. Jane Seymour is remembered as the gentle queen who gives the king a son, but gentleness may be partly a courtly costume. She comes from an ambitious family and understands the value of silence. Her household favours older forms of devotion. She intercedes for Princess Mary and tries cautiously to soften divisions within the royal family. Her success brings celebration bells, bonfires, wine, and public relief. Her death soon afterward turns her into an ideal that cannot contradict anyone. A dead queen is easier to praise than a living one, especially when the living one might disagree. In a gallery you find a painted likeness of Anne of Cleves. The familiar joke says the king rejects her because a portrait flatters her. The truth is less tidy. Diplomacy brings the match. Personal discomfort, politics, religious alliances, and court embarrassment help undo it. Anne accepts the annulment and receives land's income and the title of the king's beloved sister. This is not romantic triumph, but it is survival with unusual comfort. She maintains households, visits court plays, cards gives gifts, and outlives the king. Tudor history rarely rewards flexibility so openly. A maid carrying folded sheets tells another that Anne enjoys English ale. Whether the tale is true hardly matters. It humanizes a woman usually reduced to a failed portrait. You continue toward chambers once used by Catherine Howard. She is often remembered only for youth, beauty, and scandal. Yet her story begins in a loose aristocratic household where supervision is poor and boundaries are dangerous. Court places her near power before she possesses the experience to navigate it safely. Those who tell the tale never fully agree about her age, motives, or freedom. What remains certain is that older men, family ambition and royal expectation shape the path around her. Laughter and dancing do not protect her from a system that demands innocence while feeding on rumour. The final apartments belong to Catherine Parr. You find books stacked beside a writing desk, some in English, some in Latin. She is not merely the nurse who tends an aging husband. She publishes religious writing under her own name, manages a complex royal household, encourages education, and helps restore Mary and Elizabeth to the succession. Her learning places her near danger. A queen may discuss theology until powerful men decide that discussion resembles heresy. Catherine survives by presenting submission carefully, turning obedience into a shield while keeping her mind intact. Outside, the winter wind presses against the glass, while a distant bell marks another hour no queen can safely ignore. Near midnight, the 6 women seem less like portraits and more like footsteps layered through the same cold rooms. They pray right, negotiate, bear children, lose children, reward servants, protect relatives, promote ideas, and make choices within narrow spaces. The king dominates their stories because the court arranges memory around him. Yet, as you leave their chambers, candle smoke trailing above you, you understand that none of them is only a wife, a failure, a beauty, or a cautionary tale. Each is a political life, moving beneath silk, watched closely, remembered badly, and still resisting the label prepared for her. The distant bell follows you out of the palace and into streets silvered by frost. Behind you, the chambers of the queen sink into darkness, while ahead the city narrows toward a quieter road where stone walls rise beside bare trees. Dawn has not yet come. Lanterns sway in the hands of servants, and the little dog reappears from an alley with the satisfied expression of someone who has completed important private business. You walk north until the houses thin and the sound of the river gives way to the slower breathing of fields. A monastery stands beyond a low wall, its roofs dark beneath the winter sky. Smoke curls from the kitchen chimney. Another bell sounds, calling the brothers from sleep, and its note spreads across the frozen ground with such calm authority that even the dog lowers his head. At the guest house door, a lay brother welcomes you without asking many questions. Travellers, pilgrims, merchants, widows, and wandering clerks often seek shelter here. He gives you a bowl of warm pottage, coarse bread, and a place near the hearth. Rushes cover the floor mixed with mint and dried lavender. Your wet cloak begins to steam. The monastery seems permanent. Its stones have stood longer than anyone living can remember. Saints watch from painted panels. Candles burn before relics. In the chapel, a silver box is said to contain a fragment of a martyr's bone, though some swear the same saint has enough bones scattered across Europe to assemble several unusually determined bodies. Yet beneath this appearance of permanence, uncertainty has entered. A monk with ink on his cuffs sits beside you and speaks quietly with the guest master. A royal proclamation has arrived. New prayers are being discussed. Books once copied with care are now questioned. The king's marriage, the authority of the pope, the language of worship, and the ownership of church wealth have become matters that reach even this cold guest house. No one can quite agree when ordinary people first understand that England is changing. For some, the shift begins with a sermon. For others, it begins when a familiar prayer disappears, when a priest speaks differently, or when an official asks questions about an image that has stood in the church since childhood. You follow the ink-stained monk into the cloister. The covered walk surrounds a square of frozen grass. His sandals whisper over stone worn smooth by generations. He tells you that reform does not arrive like a single storm. It comes as letters, rumours, inspections, arguments, and cautious silences. Some brothers hope for change. They complain of corrupt officials, careless clergy, and superstitions that seem more profitable than holy. They want scripture read clearly and sermons understood. Others fear that reformers will strip away the rituals that give shape to birth, marriage, sickness, harvest, and death. In the library, manuscripts rest in wooden cupboards. Chains secure valuable books to desks. A novice sharpens a quill while pretending not to listen. Latin prayers fill one volume. An English translation lies hidden beneath another. To read the wrong book can become dangerous, yet the definition of wrong changes quickly. The monk opens a psalter decorated with blue and gold initials. His finger rests near a saint painted in the margin. He does not know whether such images will remain permitted. Even now it is hard to tell whether he fears losing theology, beauty, memory, or all three. At sunrise, villagers arrive for Mass. They stamp mud from their boots and crowd beneath the church porch. A farmer carries eggs for the monastery kitchen. A mother touches a small charm sewn inside her child's sleeve. An old man kneels before a side altar and lights a beeswax candle for his dead wife. These acts may look simple, but each contains an understanding of the world. The candle is prayer made visible. The altar belongs to a saint who may intercede in heaven. The monastery remembers names, distributes alms, offers burial, and marks the calendar with feast and fast. When reformers condemn certain customs, villagers do not hear only an argument between scholars. They hear that their parents may have prayed wrongly, that trusted objects may be empty, and that familiar routes between earth and heaven are being closed. The service begins in Latin. Some words are understood, many are not yet. Rhythm carries meaning. Bells sound at the elevation. Heads bow. The old man beside you crosses himself. Later in the chapter, house royal visitors question the monks about income, discipline, relics, and conduct. They inspect accounts and storerooms. They ask how many poor people receive food at the gate. Their clerk writes quickly, making marks that may decide large futures. One visitor unwraps the reliquary you noticed at the palace. The suspicious monk who carried it stands nearby, looking offended by the entire concept of inspection. The bone inside is examined. No miracle announces its identity. The dog sniffs once and loses interest. Some officials sincerely seek reform. Others recognize opportunity. Church land is rich and royal need is deep. Piety, policy, ambition, and money move together so closely that separating them becomes nearly impossible. At dinner, the brothers eat smoked fish beans, onions, and bread in silence while a reader recites scripture. Empty places at the table belong to brothers sent away or summoned for questioning. A young novice stares at one vacant bench. Outside, a merchant complains that holy days interrupt trade. A widow worries that new rules will end prayers for her husband's soul. A farmer wonders whether rents will rise if the monastery changes hands. Theology descends into ledgers, kitchens, graveyards, and fields. By evening, rain taps against the guest-house roof. You sit beside the half-burned candle from your journey, though you cannot remember carrying it here. The dog sleeps beside your boots. The bell sounds again, steady but no longer certain. You realize that England's break with Rome is not a clean cut made in one royal chamber. It is a slow, tearing through habits, families, parishes, and memories. It reaches the monk guarding books, the mother sewing charms, the widow paying for prayers, and the child learning new words for old faith. The bell fades into rain, and the monastery waits for whatever the next sealed letter will demand. The next sealed letter arrives before dawn, carried by a rider whose cloak drips onto the guest-house floor. The bell has only just finished sounding when the prior breaks the wax, reads in silence, and folds the parchment with hands that remain steady for several breaths before beginning to tremble. Outside, frost whitens the herb garden. Inside, the monastery has been told to prepare an inventory. You follow the brothers through corridors suddenly made strange by attention. Every object is counted. Chalices, candlesticks, vestments, bells, books, blankets, spoons, brewing tubs, carts, cattle grain, timber and iron keys all acquire numbers. A royal clerk moves from room to room scratching figures onto parchment, while two officials open chests and inspect cupboards. The process feels less like thunder than damp entering stone. Quietly, steadily, it reaches everywhere. In the sacristy, embroidered copes are lifted from cedar chests. In the library, manuscripts are stacked by size. In the infirmary, jars of dried herbs, salves, and leeches are listed beside cracked basins. The infirmera protests when an official values a jar of comfrey more highly than a book of remedies. The official explains that books are difficult to sell. The infirmera looks as though civilization has ended precisely there. No one can quite agree whether every monastery deserves sympathy. Some houses are wealthy, poorly disciplined, or nearly empty. Reformers point to neglected rules, comfortable abbots, false relics, and rents collected from struggling tenants. Yet other houses feed travellers, educate children, nurse the sick, employ labourers, lend seed, store grain, and distribute bread at the gate. The same order that corrects abuse may also remove help. By mid-morning, villagers gather beyond the wall. A widow waits for her weekly loaf. A lame veteran leans on a stick. Two orphaned sisters bring baskets of eggs in exchange for flour and candles. They know little about papal authority or royal supremacy. They know that the kitchen chimney usually smokes, that the guest house opens in bad weather, and that the infirmera understands how to bind a swollen ankle. The gatekeeper gives out bread while supplies remain. He says nothing about next week. In the cloister, the ink-stained monk wraps several books in coarse cloth. He tells you they may be sent to another house, sold scattered or cut apart for bindings. Some swear that whole libraries vanish into storerooms and market stalls. Pages become wrappers, covers, or kindling. Others are rescued by collectors who value learning, decoration, or merely good parchment. Even now it is hard to tell how much knowledge disappears through neglect and how much survives by accident. A cart enters the courtyard. Its wheel strikes a stone and cracks with a sound that makes everyone turn. The driver curses softly. The little dog trots over, examines the damage, and sits beside it as if appointed master of repairs. Brothers fetch a lever rope and spare timber. For a while, the monastery's fate is postponed by the urgent medieval problem of a broken cart wheel. When the cart is repaired, chests are loaded aboard. The suspicious monk appears carrying the disputed reliquary beneath his cloak. An official stops him at the gate and asks what he holds. The monk replies that it is a sacred trust. The official replies that sacred trusts must also be inventoried. They stare at one another until the prior intervenes. The box is opened. Inside lies the pale fragment of bone wrapped in faded silk. Some say it belongs to a martyr. Others say it may belong to a sheep. The dog offers no theological judgment. The reliquary is placed in a chest with silver plate. At noon, the brothers eat in silence. Smoked fish, beans, coarse bread, and weak ale sit on the tables. The reader begins a familiar passage, but his voice falters. Places are assigned, pensions are discussed. Younger monks may return to families that barely remember them. Older monks may receive small payments provided officials honor the promises written down. A novice asks where he should go. No one answers immediately. Beyond the walls, practical questions multiply. Who will maintain the bridge near the ford? Who will keep the mill working? Who will employ shepherds on the monastery lands? Who will pay for candles in the parish church, or distribute alms during winter? Royal policy travels on parchment, but local life is tied with hundreds of smaller cords. Some cords snap at once, others tighten around new hands. The land does not remain empty. Courtiers, merchants, lawyers, and neighbouring gentlemen seek leases or purchase former monastic estates. A new owner may improve fields, repair barns, or manage accounts more closely. He may also raise rents, reduce customary access, enclose pasture, and dismiss workers. Dissolution creates opportunity, but opportunity seldom arrives equally. You walk with displaced brothers along the road at dusk. Each carries what he is, allowed a cloak, a blanket, a book, a wooden cup, perhaps a few coins. Their habits draw stares. A woman kneeling at a roadside shrine watches them pass and presses a pilgrim badge between her fingers. The monk beside you has spent 30 years hearing the same bells. Now he measures time by milestones and fading light. At a village, the alehouse offers shelter. Wet wool steams near the hearth. A former lay brother shares pottage with a mason who once repaired the abbey roof. Neither knows whether work will continue. A farmer says the new landlord promises fairness. Another snorts into his cup. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether promises become less trustworthy when written on finer parchment. Night settles over the road. Behind you, the monastery bell remains silent for the first time anyone can remember. The absence seems larger than sound. You lie beneath a wool blanket in the alehouse loft, listening to rain touch the thatch. The dog curls beside the door. Somewhere in darkness, carts carry silver books and vestments toward uncertain destinations. Somewhere else, a widow wonders where next week's bread will come from. The monastery has not vanished in one dramatic instant. It is being unmade piece by piece through lists, seals, sales departures, and doors locked with new keys. No bell answers the darkness, and no familiar footstep returns. And across England the same quiet ending begins again. Morning comes grey and damp above the alehouse roof, and the first smell to reach you is not incense, silver polish, or royal spice, but onions softening in a pot. The displaced monks are already awake. One tightens the cord around his bundle, another warms both hands around a wooden cup. The little dog watches the kitchen door with the concentration of a scholar awaiting revelation. You descend the ladder and find the alewife stirring breakfast. The pot contains oats, peas, chopped leek, yesterday's broth, and a little bacon fat scraped from a jar. This is pottage, the patient centre of ordinary life. It changes with season, purse, harvest, and luck. In one house it is thick with beans and herbs. In another it is thin enough to show the spoon beneath the surface. The alewife gives you a bowl and a heel of coarse bread. The crust is hard, but hunger makes an excellent sauce. Outside, carts begin moving through the village. A woman carries a basket of eggs toward market. A boy drives geese along the lane. Smoke rises from cottages where families prepare food over open hearths, often in a single iron pot, shared across many meals. Fuel costs effort, so a fire must do several jobs at once: heat the room, boil the pottage, dry wet clothing, warm water, and discourage everyone from complaining too freely. You walk toward the fields beside a farmer named Martin, who offers no surname because everyone nearby already knows which Martin he is. He explains that bread matters more than meat. Wheat produces fine white loaves for richer households, while rye, barley, oats, peas, and beans enter darker breads eaten by labourers. During poor harvests, flour may be stretched with whatever can be ground without immediate disaster. Some swear that bakers once added chalk ash or other tricks to make loaves appear whiter. Officials inspect weights and quality, and dishonest bakers can be punished. A loaf is too important to leave entirely to conscience. At the edge of the common field, frost lies pale on the furrows. Men repair hedges while women gather fallen branches and check winter stores. Grain sacks hang above damp floors. Apples shrivel in baskets. Onions and turnips wait in cool corners. Salted meat, dried peas, smoked fish, and hard cheese carry households through months when gardens give little. Winter is not one long feast beside a roaring hearth. It is careful counting. In Martin's cottage, rushes cover the packed earth near the door, while the rest of the floor remains bare and hard. His wife Alice hangs strips of smoked bacon from a beam beyond easy reach of dogs, children, and optimistic visitors. A crock of butter sits near the coolest wall. Cheese rests beneath cloth. Nothing is casual. Food represents land, labour, weather, rent, tithe, and time. Alice adds cabbage to the household pot. She tells you that meat appears on better days at harvests, celebrations, weddings, or when an animal must be slaughtered before winter. Beef, pork, mutton, poultry, rabbit, and game all exist, but access depends on wealth, law, and place. Hunting deer in a lord's park is not a charming rustic adventure. It is a splendid method for meeting local justice. Fish fills many tables, especially on fast days. Herring travels inland, salted or smoked. Eels come from rivers and marshes. Stockfish dried hard as timber must be soaked before cooking. Coastal towns offer greater variety, though freshness remains a race against distance. No one can quite agree whether certain preserved fish taste better after long preparation or merely become less argumentative. At noon you accompany Alice to market. Stalls gather around the church, sheltered by canvas and timber. Market tolls are collected at the entrance. Sellers offer onions, leeks, apples, garlic, eggs, cheese, honey butter, herbs, small pies, and loaves marked by weight. A butcher displays cuts according to purse and rank. Offal sells cheaply and wastes nothing. The richer sort can purchase spices, sugar, imported wine, dried fruit, and fine flour. Sugar is treated less like an ordinary sweetener and more like a costly spice used in medicines and elaborate dishes. Honey remains the familiar sweetness of many kitchens. Children stare at sugared treats with the same sacred attention adults reserve for relics. You pause beside an herb seller, whose bundles include sage parsley, mint rue fennel and feverfew. Food and medicine overlap. Sage may season meat, soothe a throat, or support a reputation for wisdom. Some swear that parsley should never be transplanted because disturbing its roots brings misfortune. The herb seller says this while happily selling parsley to people willing to take the risk. At an ale stall, drink is measured into cups. Ale is brewed from grain and consumed daily in varying strengths. Household brewing is often women's work, and successful alewives can earn steady income. A broom or ale stake outside a door may announce drink for sale. Poor brewing damages not only pride, but neighborhood peace. You drink small ale with bread and cheese beneath the awning as rain begins. Around you, people eat standing, bargaining between mouthfuls. There are no endless platters of swans, peacocks, and jeweled pies. Such spectacles belong to rare, elite occasions, not ordinary days. Most people know the rhythm of repeated ingredients altered by herbs, leftovers, and necessity. Yet meals are not joyless. A thick pottage on a freezing evening brings comfort. Fresh bread from an oven draws neighbours by smell. A wedding pie, a harvest ale, or a Christmas dish can brighten memory for years. Shared food marks hospitality, obligation, and trust. By dusk, you return to the cottage. Alice sets trenchers on a low board. The family eats pottage bread, onions, cheese, and a little smoked bacon. The dog receives a crust after performing no useful labour whatsoever. You warm your hands near the hearth and understand that Tudor food is neither constant famine nor constant banquet. It is seasonal, ranked practical, repetitive, and deeply social. The royal feast exists, but beneath it stand fields, ovens, brewhouses, fish carts, winter storehouses, and countless guarded pots. No crumb is wasted when spring remains far away. Outside rain darkens the lane. Inside the spoon circles slowly through the bowl, and supper lasts as long as the fire. The fire settles lower after supper, and the family begins the quiet work that follows eating. Bowls are scraped, spoons wiped, crusts saved, and the iron pot shifted away from the strongest heat. Alice pours warm water into a shallow basin and places it near the hearth. One by one, hands and faces are washed before sleep, not with luxurious abundance, but with the care of people who know every bucket must be drawn, carried heated, and guarded from ash. You rinse your fingers and discover that the water turns cloudy almost at once. Mud has entered beneath your nails, smoke has settled into your skin, and the lane appears to have followed you indoors in several determined layers. The belief that Tudor people never wash begins to seem less convincing. Morning reveals the larger rhythm of household cleanliness. Alice sweeps yesterday's rushes from the doorway, scatters fresh herbs near the hearth, and opens the shutter despite the cold. Air must move through the cottage even when the air is sharp enough to punish everyone for inviting it. Bedding is shaken, wool blankets are brushed, fleas are searched for with a patience usually associated with prayer. No one can quite agree how often every household washes the whole body. Practice depends on wealth, season, health, access to water, local custom, and personal enthusiasm. A basin wash is common. Hands are cleaned before meals in respectable homes. Faces, necks, feet, and private areas receive attention when water time and privacy allow. A full bath requires more preparation. Water must be carried in buckets, heated in pots, and poured into a wooden tub that may also serve for laundry, brewing, storage, or whatever else the household needs. Several family members may use the same warmed water in turn, not because dirt is considered charming, but because fuel and labor are expensive. Alice tells you that public bathhouses once served many towns, though some have closed or gained doubtful reputations. Certain moralists suspect that bathing invites idleness, luxury, or behavior far less innocent than soap. Physicians disagree among themselves. Some recommend baths for balance and comfort. Others warn that hot water opens the pores and permits dangerous air to enter. Even now, it is hard to tell whether people fear dirt more than corrupted air, or corrupted air more than the effort of heating another kettle. You leave the cottage with a bundle of linen balanced across your arms. Down by the stream, several women kneel near flat stones washing shirts, caps, sheets, aprons, and cloths. They soak fabric, rub it with soap, beat it against wood, rinse it, wring it, and spread it over hedges or lines. The work is cold, heavy, and relentless. Soap is made from fat mixed with lye, often rough on the hands, but useful against grease. Finer, scented soaps exist for those with money. Lavender, rosemary, rosewater, and herbs may perfume linen or skin. Clean clothing matters because linen worn next to the body absorbs sweat and oil. A fresh shirt can provide the feeling of cleanliness even when bathing from head to foot is inconvenient. One laundress has cracked red knuckles and a strip of cloth tied around her wrist. She says sage, steeped in water, eases the pain. Another recommends goose fat. A third advises prayer to a local saint whose specialty seems remarkably broad. Some swear that washing linen beneath a certain moon keeps it whiter. The moon, as usual, has not confirmed its involvement. The laundresses continue regardless, trusting strong arms, cold water, and experience more than astronomy today. At the manor house, cleanliness becomes more elaborate. Servants carry pewter basins and ewers to chambers. Gentlemen wash before dining while a towel is offered over an attendant's arm. Scented water may contain rosemary, cloves, or citrus peel. Combs, cloths, tooth powders, and small mirrors sit inside wooden boxes. Teeth are cleaned with cloth twigs, feathers, salt herbs, or abrasive powders. Breath may be sweetened with fennel seeds or parsley. Tooth decay still flourishes, especially among those wealthy enough to consume sugar regularly. It is a quiet Tudor irony that expensive sweetness can purchase both pleasure and a future conversation with a barber surgeon. In an upper chamber, a maid empties a close stool into a covered vessel. Chamber pots are common wherever walking outdoors at night would be cold, unsafe, or undignified. Their contents must go somewhere. Servants carry them away. Household drains receive some waste. Cesspits hold more, and streets suffer when people choose speed over courtesy. Larger towns employ rakers to remove refuse and night soil. Privies may project over pits, ditches, or waterways. Palace garderobes can use vertical shafts, though blockages, smells, and unpleasant drafts remind everyone that architecture has limits. A sprig of herbs near the nose becomes a modest defence. You pass a physician who carries a pomander, a small perforated container filled with fragrant substances. Sweet scents are believed to protect against foul air and sickness. Rosemary, ambergris, musk spices, and vinegar may all serve. The theory is imperfect, but avoiding rotten smells sometimes leads people away from genuinely unhealthy places, which is more than can be said for several grander medical ideas. Near the kitchen yard, refuse is sorted more carefully than you expect. Bones can become tools or be boiled again. Ash helps make lye. Rags are reused. Food scraps feed animals. Human waste may fertilize fields once removed from crowded spaces. Tudor life creates filth, but it also wastes little. At dusk, you return to the cottage carrying linen, stiff from cold air. The dog shakes rain across the floor and is immediately pushed back outside, proving that standards exist even for beloved companions. Alice pours another basin and adds a pinch of dried lavender. You wash your feet before settling near the fire. The water is not plentiful. The soap is harsh and the towel is coarse, yet the act brings warmth and relief. Tudor England is not clean by modern measures. Streets stink, drains fail, parasites thrive, and safe water demands effort. But its people do not simply surrender to dirt. They sweep, scrub, rinse, scent air, boil, brush, launder, and carry countless buckets through cold mornings. Cleanliness here is not absent. It is labor repeated quietly, one basin at a time. The lavender water cools beside the hearth, and morning begins with the scrape of stools, the clink of bowls, and Alice tying her apron before anyone else has opened their eyes. She carries a basket to market checks. The ale fermenting near the wall reminds Martin which grain must be sold, and tells a neighbour that payment for last week's cheese is due. You follow her into the lane where women are already working in every direction. One drives geese towards the square, another balances 2 pails from a yoke. A widow unlocks a small shop beneath her house. 2 sisters spread dyed wool across a frame, testing whether the night air has altered the colour. The town wakes through their labour. Tudor law places women beneath severe limits, especially after marriage. A married woman's legal identity may be absorbed into her husband's. Property contracts and wages become complicated. Yet daily life refuses to fit neatly inside legal theory. Households need income, markets need sellers, inns need keepers, farms need managers, and debts need collecting. Alice sells eggs, onions, and small rounds of cheese beneath a canvas awning. She bargains with a baker, who complains about the price. She reminds him that his wife paid the same amount last week without composing a tragedy. He pays. Nearby, an alewife hangs a broom above her door to show drink is available. Brewing is skilled work. Grain must be malted, water heated, mash watched yeast, judged vessels cleaned, and ale sold before it spoils. Some build businesses strong enough to employ servants and supply customers. Officials test measures and prices. An alewife who cheats may face a fine or public shame, though men in other trades display no natural immunity to dishonesty. No one can quite agree why later memory turns every alewife into either a cheerful hostess or a suspicious witch. Most are simply trying to sell decent drink before the barrel goes sour. At the cloth market, women spin card weave, sew mend, wash full and finish fabric. Wool supports much of the English economy, and female labour runs through nearly every stage. A merchant may sign the larger contract, but hundreds of quiet hands prepare what he sells. You enter a workshop where a master tailor cuts dark wool for a gentleman's coat. His wife keeps accounts, receives customers, supervises apprentices, and checks finished seams. She knows who pays promptly and who arrives wearing confidence instead of money. When her husband travels, the workshop does not pause. It becomes more efficient. Some wives trade openly beside husbands, some widows inherit businesses and continue them under their own names. Widowhood brings grief and vulnerability, but it can also provide a degree of legal independence denied during marriage. A widow may hold property, make contracts, sue for debts, and manage apprentices depending on place and circumstance. Even now it is hard to tell how many women's contributions disappear from records because a husband's name stands above the account. You cross the square toward an inn where Mistress Hale directs 3 servants, checks firewood, settles an argument over a stable fee, and refuses a traveller likely to leave fleas without payment. Her keys hang from a heavy ring at her belt. They open cellars, cupboards, chambers, and chests. In a world of oak doors and scarce goods, keys are symbols of trust and practical power. Mistress Hale serves ale, arranges beds, buys meat, hires labour lends, small sums hears news, and remembers faces. An inn is a business information exchange shelter and occasionally a court of public opinion. She rules it without needing a throne. Behind the inn, a healer sorts bundles of sage, feverfew, yarrow comfrey, and rue. Women provide much ordinary health care, especially during childbirth, childhood illness, and household sickness. They prepare poultices, teas, salves, broths, and charms. Some knowledge comes through long practice, some rests on mistaken belief. Most is offered because no university-trained physician will appear at a poor cottage in winter. The healer places a sprig of rowan above a cradle to discourage harmful spirits. Some swear iron scissors beneath the bed protect a labouring mother. Others tie written prayers around the waist. These customs sit beside useful practices such as washing cloths, keeping the mother warm, and preparing nourishing broth. Wisdom and superstition share the same basket. At the manor yard, women milk cows, make butter, tend poultry, preserve food, gather fuel, weed gardens and work during harvest. Their labor varies by season but rarely disappears. A gentle woman may avoid carrying dung, yet she manages stores, servants, dairies, correspondence, charitable gifts, and household discipline. Rank changes the tools, not the expectation of usefulness. You meet a steward's wife inspecting winter linens. She counts sheets, checks for damp orders, repairs, and notes which blankets went missing after the last guests departed. Her household book contains purchases, remedies, recipes, and names of servants owed wages. Domestic management is administration performed beside a linen chest. Girls learn by watching. They spin thread, carry water, feed hens, help at stalls, and memorize prices. Some enter service in wealthier homes where wages may be saved toward marriage. Others apprentice in trades, though opportunities vary. Their work is not hidden from society. It is treated as ordinary, and ordinary things often vanish from grand stories. At sunset, Alice returns with an empty basket and several coins tied into the corner of a cloth. She has sold well. Martin asks what remains. She tells him, then keeps 2 pennies aside for salt and lamp oil before he can propose something less sensible. The dog waits by the door, having contributed nothing to commerce. You sit beneath the soot-black rafters while Alice records debts with marks on a wooden tally. Around you, the household rests on work, crossing every boundary between home and market. Brewing becomes trade, sewing becomes income, healing becomes authority, widowhood becomes management, a set of keys becomes quiet command. Tudor women do not live freely, and the law can narrow their choices with painful force. Yet they are not absent from public life. They bargain, produce, inherit, lend, supervise, heal, host, sue, sell, and remember who owes what. Outside, the market shutters close. Inside, Alice counts the coins once more, and the sound is small, steady, and entirely her own. The coins fall silent, and the house settles into evening. Near the hearth, a child pushes a wooden animal through the rushes, making it stumble over crumbs and ash. Another winds a length of string around 2 fingers. A girl of perhaps 9 sits beside Alice, learning to mend a torn sleeve with stitches that wander like a pilgrim. Their work and play mingle so closely that the boundary between them is difficult to see. Tudor childhood is often imagined as brief, joyless, and nearly invisible. Children certainly work early. They carry water, mind geese, gather sticks, sweep floors, turn spit, scare birds from fields, and help with younger siblings. Yet they are not treated simply as unfinished adults. Their age matters. Their smallness matters. Their survival matters in a world where illness can enter a household without warning. You watch Alice lift the youngest child onto her lap and rub warmth into cold fingers. She checks his forehead, examines a cough, and ties a cloth packet around his neck. Inside are dried herbs and a written blessing. Some swear that coral beads protect children from sickness or evil influence. Others hang wolf-teeth rowan or small crosses near a cradle. No one can quite agree whether these objects guard the body, calm the parents, or do both. A wooden cradle stands near the fire, positioned away from drafts, but not so close that sparks can reach it. Babies are wrapped snugly in bands of cloth, a practice meant to keep limbs straight and bodies warm. Feeding depends on family circumstance. Many mothers nurse their own infants. Wealthier households may employ wet nurses, creating emotional arrangements that records describe poorly. The next morning, children spill into the lane before the frost has melted. They roll hoops, chase one another between carts, toss knucklebones, and strike a stuffed ball with sticks. A boy carries a whistle made from bone. Two girls sing a rhyme while bouncing pebbles against a wall. Their games require little money and much invention. The little dog joins them, proving that he has finally discovered his profession. At the churchyard, older boys practice throwing stones at a mark, while younger children imitate them from a safer distance. Adults complain that games encourage laziness, noise-broken windows, and moral decline. Adults in every age appear to believe childhood was better shortly before they began observing it closely. Inside the parish church, a schoolmaster teaches letters to a small group seated on benches. Education it is uneven. Some boys attend grammar schools where Latin dominates the day. Some girls learn to read at home in convent traditions that linger or through private tutors in wealthier families. Many children receive little formal schooling but gain practical knowledge through work, worship, songs, stories, and observation. A hornbook hangs from one child's belt. It is a wooden paddle bearing a printed sheet protected by a thin layer of transparent horn. The alphabet prayers and syllables fit beneath the surface. The object survives mud fingers and impatient instruction better than loose paper. The schoolmaster taps the bench with a rod. Discipline is strict and corporal punishment is accepted, though its frequency varies. Some teachers strike readily. Others understand that terror produces poor Latin and worse attendance. Even now it is hard to tell whether later tales exaggerate every classroom into a chamber of punishment or merely remember the loudest masters. At noon you visit the manor where a noble child learns in a brighter chamber. His books are better, his tutor more learned, and his coat lined with fur. Yet his day is also controlled. He studies languages, scripture, music, manners, riding, and household expectation. A girl of similar rank may learn reading, music, embroidery, estate management, religion, and perhaps Latin, especially if her family values humanist learning. Privilege provides books, but it does not provide freedom. Children of the elite may be sent into other noble households where they learn service, etiquette, alliances, and the habits of rank. Young people from humbler homes also enter service, often during adolescence. Leaving home is common and does not necessarily mean affection is absent. Families remain connected through visits, gifts, messages, and hope. In a kitchen passage, a scullion boy sleeps against a basket before a cook nudges him awake. He rises, lifts a pail, and continues working. His labour is real, but so is the cook's kindness when she slips him a warm crust. You follow several children toward a winter field where they collect fallen branches. They know which hedge belongs to whom, which path floods where berries grow, and which old woman dislikes trespassers. Knowledge arrives through repeated journeys. One child points toward a crooked ash tree and says spirits gather there after dark. Another insists a headless calf was seen near the ford. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether such stories frighten children into obedience or entertain them during long evenings. Probably both. Back at the cottage, Alice opens a small chest containing linen caps, swaddling bands, a broken rattle, and a lock of hair tied with thread. These objects carry tenderness more clearly than official records. Wills sometimes leave children spoons, beds, clothing, livestock, tools, or money. Parents arrange guardianships and apprenticeships because they fear what may happen after death. High child mortality does not mean parents avoid attachment. Grief appears in prayers, memorials, letters, and names given again to later children. Love persists even when loss is common. Perhaps it becomes more watchful. At supper, the children eat pottage after the adults, but receive the softer bread. One recites a prayer too quickly and must begin again. Another drops a spoon and blames the dog, who accepts the accusation with calm. The hearth dims. A wool blanket is spread across a shared bed. The children settle close for warmth, whispering until Alice tells them to sleep. Their day has contained work, learning, play correction, hunger, affection, superstition, and laughter. Tudor childhood is not gentle by modern standards. It is demanding, risky, and disciplined. Yet it is not empty of care. Children are useful, vulnerable, noisy, loved, and woven tightly into the household. You listen as their breathing slows beneath the rafters, while outside the frost returns to the lane, and the dog dreams quietly beside the door. Before sunrise, the children remain asleep beneath the wool blanket, but the adults are moving. Martin fastens his cloak, Alice wraps bread in cloth, and you follow them into a lane glazed with frost. Today the manor court is meeting beneath the old oak beside the hall, where neighbours will settle quarrels, pay fines, report broken fences, and pretend not to enjoy one another's misfortunes. The little dog trots ahead as though summoned for legal business. By the time you reach, the green villagers stand in groups, stamping warmth into their feet. A steward sits at a table beneath an awning with parchment ink tally sticks and a wooden box for coins. Beside him waits the bailiff, broader and less gifted with patience. An iron key hangs at his belt. The manor court is not a royal court of velvet trumpets and judges in grand robes. It is local, practical, repetitive, and interested in hedges. Tenants owe attendance because land comes with obligations. The court records who holds which strips, who must repair a ditch, who has failed to perform labour, and whose animals have wandered where they should not. A clerk calls names. Some answer. Others answer from behind taller neighbours, hoping confidence might reduce a fine. The first dispute concerns a pig found rooting in a barley field. Its owner argues that the fence was weak. The farmer argues that the pig possesses determination. Witnesses disagree about when the gate was last closed. No one can quite agree whether the animal escaped by accident or was encouraged toward better feeding. The steward listens, asks questions, and imposes a payment. The pig tied nearby appears satisfied with the outcome. Next comes a complaint about ale sold in short measure. The accused alewife presents her cup and insists it is honest. The bailiff compares it with the official vessel. A murmur runs through the crowd. Measures matter because daily exchange depends upon trust, and trust becomes easier to discuss when backed by a fine. The alewife is ordered to correct the cup. She leaves with her dignity intact, and her opinion of the bailiff entirely unchanged. You notice that women appear before the court. They complain of debts, defend property, answer accusations, and report nuisances. Legal limits remain severe, especially for married women, yet local records fill with their voices. A widow claims rent owed from a pasture. A servant demands unpaid wages. Two sisters dispute the ownership of a brass pot inherited from their mother. The pot is brought forward as evidence. It has one bent handle and enough soot to suggest that affection has improved its value. The sisters speak over each other until the steward threatens to postpone the matter. At last one keeps the pot, while the other receives 2 pewter spoons and a promise of grain. Justice here is less a perfect principle than a series of negotiated endings. After the property cases come offences against order. A man has allowed his dung heap to block part of the lane. Another has drawn water from a neighbour's well after being warned not to. A third has cut wood from common land beyond his allowance. Small acts matter because village resources are shared, limited, and remembered. The court also enforces custom. Boundaries may be marked by stones, ditches, trees, or memories repeated from one generation to another. Some swear that children are walked around parish edges and bumped against landmarks, so they will never forget them. The method is educational, memorable, and not especially kind to the ribs. Near noon, a more serious case is heard. 2 men fought outside the alehouse, breaking a bench and frightening a horse. Neither admits beginning it. One says the other insulted his sister. The other says he merely described her accurately. The steward closes his eyes for a moment. Both are fined. The bench must be repaired. Punishment in Tudor England can be harsh. Stocks, whipping, imprisonment, mutilation, and execution all exist, depending upon offence status and court. Yet, most local business does not end in spectacular cruelty. It ends in pennies owed, duties restored, apologies forced, or promises entered into the roll. Even now it is hard to tell whether these modest penalties preserve peace or simply postpone the next argument until market day. At the edge of the green stand, the stocks empty for now. Their wood is dark with rain. Public shame works because community life is close. To sit trapped while neighbours pass, joke, stare, or throw refuse can wound reputation more deeply than a private punishment. The dog sniffs one post and decides the institution requires no further inspection. A constable presents a traveller accused of begging without permission. Tudor authorities distrust wandering people, especially those without work, household, or clear place of origin. Poverty is feared as disorder. The traveller says his master died and his wages were never paid. The constable says every wanderer carries a story. Those who tell the tale never fully agree how often mercy survives inside such rules. The steward orders the man fed, then sent toward his home parish with a written pass. It is not freedom, but it is better than the crowd expected. Alice slips him a crust as he leaves. After dinner, the court hears matters of inheritance, tenancy, and broken promises. A young couple seeks approval to take a cottage. An old tenant asks that his son assume his holding. A boundary dispute requires 3 elders to recall where a vanished willow once stood. Memory becomes evidence when parchment is incomplete. By late afternoon, the clerk's fingers are black with ink, and the coin box is heavier. The frost has melted into mud. People leave muttering about fairness, unfairness, and what they would have decided had anyone sensible asked them. You walk home beside Martin and Alice. The court has not delivered equal justice. Rank, wealth, reputation, gender, and friendship all shape what is heard and believed. Still, it has given the village a place to speak, bargain, accuse, remember, and contain conflict before it grows. Behind you, the steward rolls the parchment, the bailiff locks the box, and the old oak drips quietly over the empty green. The dog carries away a stolen glove, which remains the day's only completely unresolved crime. The stolen glove is recovered before the cottage disappears behind you, though the dog releases it only after Martin offers a crust and a stern lecture on property. By morning, the village road stretches west beneath a sky. Frost lies in the cart. Ruts and smoke rises from fields where labourers burn hedge trimmings. London's proclamations feel very far away here, yet their consequences travel steadily along every muddy lane. You walk between strips of winter wheat divided by low ridges. The open fields are not one farmer's private patch, but a pattern of scattered holdings, customary rights, shared pasture, and remembered boundaries. One family works several narrow strips in different places, spreading risk between better and poorer soil. After harvest, animals may graze the stubble together. Common land supplies fuel grazing reeds, nuts, and the small necessities that keep poorer households alive. At the edge of the parish, new stakes stand beside a ditch. A gentleman from the next manor has begun enclosing ground for sheep. Wool brings profit, and sheep require fewer workers than grain. Hedges rise where villagers once crossed freely. A path used for generations narrows between thorn and timber. An old woman stops before the barrier and touches the cut earth with her stick. She remembers gathering fallen wood there as a girl. The steward says the land has always belonged to the Lord. She replies that belonging and using are not the same thing. No one can quite agree where ownership ends and custom begins. The court rolls may record rents and holdings, but habits older than parchment carry their own authority. A right repeated for centuries feels as solid as stone until someone arrives with a surveyor, a fence, and a better lawyer. Farther on, you find a cottage standing empty. Its thatch has slipped. Nettles fill the doorway. The family who lived there left after rent rose and work declined. Some went to a nearby town. One son entered service. Another joined labourers searching for harvest work farther south. Their absence is quiet, leaving no rebellion, only a cold hearth and an orchard no one prunes. At noon you shelter in a barn, where men repair flails and women twist straw bands. Grain hangs from the rafters in sacks protected from mice by smooth wooden posts. A cat sleeps near the ladder, employed under terms entirely of its own choosing. The farmer counts what remains until spring and calculates how much can be sold after rent, tithe, seed, household use, and obligations are removed. Harvest rules everything. Too much rain blackens grain, too little shrivels it, wind flattens crops. Frost arrives early. A summer storm can undo months of work before anyone reaches the field. People watch clouds, insects, birds, and saints' days for guidance. Some swear that sowing beneath a waxing moon strengthens the crop. Others carry blessed bread around field boundaries or bury a charm near the first furrow. In the village church porch, tenants gather around a man reading a notice about rents. The new terms are written in formal language, but everyone understands the important part. Payments will rise. Old labour services may be converted into cash. Fines for entering a holding may increase. The Lord's officers call this improvement. The tenants call it several things too impolite for the church porch. A mason suggests refusing together. A prosperous tenant warns that the steward will select one man at a time. A widow says she cannot pay more and will not pretend otherwise. Their resistance has no banners. It appears as delay, missing documents, disputed boundaries, animals accidentally grazing beyond new hedges, and collective memory becoming suddenly precise. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether one enclosure fence is torn down by villagers or collapses during a conveniently violent wind. By sunrise, the posts lie flat. No witness has seen anything. Even the dog looks innocent. You follow a pack-horse track over higher ground. Below, villages sit around church towers, mills, ponds, and greens. They are connected to markets and royal government, but they remain governed by seasons and local relationships. A proclamation against unlawful games may be read after Sunday service, then ignored behind the alehouse. New religious instructions may remove an image from the church, while someone quietly hides it in a loft. At a manor house, the steward opens ledgers beside a fire. He records rents, livestock seed, timber wages, and arrears. His pages present the countryside as numbers, Outside, a tenant knows the same land by wet corners, stubborn clay nesting birds, and the place where his father collapsed during harvest. Both descriptions are true, only one fits neatly into an account book. The steward complains that villagers resist every change. Villagers complain that stewards rename old burdens and call them new efficiency. Between them lies the manor court, where custom is argued one field at a time. Toward evening you cross a pasture, silvered with mist. Sheep move like pale stones in the dimness. A shepherd wears a heavy wool cloak and carries a crook polished smooth by use. He tells you that more sheep mean more wool, but fewer ploughmen, fewer cottages, and fewer mouths buying bread from the village baker. At a roadside shrine, someone has left a crust, a pin, and a twist of blue thread. The official saint has lost part of his painted face, yet travellers still pause. Old customs persist because people repeat them, not because authorities approve. You share bread beside a small fire, with labourers walking toward uncertain employment. Their boots are split, their jokes dry, their knowledge of roads exact. One carries a wooden bowl, another keeps a sickle wrapped in cloth. They speak of wages, weather, landlords, and rumours of rising in distant counties. Night gathers over the hedges. Far away a manor window glows. Nearer, an enclosed field lies silent behind new stakes. The countryside appears peaceful from the hill, but beneath that stillness are bargains, resentments, memories, and small acts of refusal. You pull your cloak tighter and continue through the frost, understanding that Tudor England is not ruled from London alone. It is negotiated in every ditch, rent roll, footpath, common pasture, and field where people decide how much change they will endure before they quietly push back. The frost road carries you toward a river town where masts rise above tiled roofs like a winter forest stripped of leaves. By dawn, the labourers beside you turn toward farms and workshops while you follow the smell of tar salt, wet rope, and smoked fish. Carts crowd the quay. Porters bend beneath sacks of wool. Sailors shout across water darkened by tide, and gulls circle overhead with the confidence of creatures exempt from market tolls. This is not an England sealed behind grey seas, speaking only to itself. Ships arrive from the Low Countries, France, Spain, Portugal, the Baltic, and ports farther away than most villagers will ever imagine. They bring wine, salt, timber, iron, cloth, dyes, spices, books, glass fruit, and news. They leave with wool, cloth, hides, tin, lead, and hopes carefully packed beside the cargo. You step around coils of rope while a customs officer checks a merchant's papers beneath a canvas shelter. His table holds weights, seals ink, and a cup of ale already cold. Every barrel is declared, every bale assessed, and every merchant suddenly develops a touching devotion to modest arithmetic. The officer appears unmoved. Nearby, a Flemish trader bargains in English sharpened by long practice. A London cloth merchant replies in phrases borrowed from French and Dutch. Languages mix along the quay more freely than polite courtiers admit. Foreign artisans live in English towns, bringing skills in weaving, printing, metalwork, glass-making, brewing, and navigation. They are welcomed when useful, blamed when trade turns poor, and taxed whenever officials remember them. No one can quite agree whether strangers make a town richer or merely give local people someone new to suspect. Both opinions may be expressed by the same man before dinner. You enter a warehouse where wool cloth is stacked beneath oiled covers. England's prosperity rests heavily upon sheep, but raw wool is no longer the whole story. Finished cloth brings greater profit, and its production ties countryside to town. Spinners, carders, fullers, dyers, weavers, shearers, merchants, carriers, and inspectors all leave their labour in each folded piece. A fuller shows you cloth thickened by pounding and cleansing. The work once uses feet in tubs and later mechanical hammers driven by water. Strong soap, clay, stale urine, and much endurance remove grease. The fuller insists the smell fades. You decide this is probably true after several years. At a nearby dye house, steam rises from vats of madder, woad weld, and imported materials. Blue cloth emerges from yellow-green liquid and darkens as air reaches it, a small transformation that still feels like magic. Some swear dyers know secret charms to fix color. The master says the true secret is temperature, timing clean water, and apprentices who do not wander away. Beyond the warehouse, you find a printer unpacking paper brought through continental trade. Printed books, pamphlets, proclamations, almanacs, and religious arguments move faster than manuscripts copied by hand. Ideas cross borders hidden in bales carried by merchants or passed among scholars. Authorities inspect suspicious texts, yet words slip through ports more easily than armed men. A sailor buys a cheap almanac predicting weather, feast days, eclipses, and fortunate times for bloodletting. He trusts it enough to plan a voyage, but not enough to postpone drinking. At the harbour tavern, maps hang near the fire. They are practical objects, political claims, and invitations to exaggeration. Coastlines bend uncertainly. Islands appear larger than truth. Empty spaces hold sea monsters, winds, or decorative ships. Even now it is hard to tell whether some creatures are warnings, ornaments, or confessions that the map maker has run out of reliable information. You sit beside men who have sailed south toward Iberia and west into the Atlantic. Their stories grow with every cup. They speak of violent storms, unfamiliar stars, strange fish, rich ports and islands that appear on one chart, but not the next. Those who tell the tale never fully agree where fact ends and tavern embroidery begins. English voyages are often remembered as bold national adventures from the beginning, yet the reality is hesitant and competitive. Merchants seek profit, mariners seek wages, gentlemen seek favour. The crown seeks roots, revenue, prestige, and advantage against rivals. Exploration is rarely a pure quest for knowledge. It carries trade, diplomacy, religion, private ambition, and violence in the same crowded vessel. You walk onto a ship preparing for departure. Its deck is cramped with barrels of water, ale, salted meat, dried peas, hard biscuit tools, rope, spare canvas weapons, and trade goods. Sailors sleep wherever space permits, often in damp clothing. Rats travel without paying passage and maintain no respect for rank. A charm hangs near the mast, a small piece of blessed wax wrapped in cloth. Some mariners carry saints' medals, touch the wood before sailing, or avoid certain words believed to invite misfortune. One man refuses to whistle because it may call stronger winds. Another whistles deliberately to prove courage, then stops when everyone glares. Navigation depends on experience. Sounding lines, compasses, charts, stars, currents, coastal landmarks, and patient calculation. It also depends on weather behaving with minimal malice, which weather rarely promises. Back on the quay, foreign diplomats pass beneath fur-lined cloaks, while interpreters hurry beside them. England is not a lonely island kingdom watching the world from afar. It is entangled in marriages, loans, wars, treaties, church disputes, commercial rivalries, and imported fashions. A decision in Antwerp can alter wages in an English weaving town. A failed harvest abroad can raise prices at home. A royal marriage negotiation can occupy clerks, ambassadors, tailors, cooks, and rumour for months. At sunset, bells sound across the harbour, sailors haul a gangplank aboard, merchants lock iron-bound chests, porters finish their ale. The little dog sits beside a coil of rope, considering an international career until a fishwife drives him away. You watch the ship move into river mist, carrying cloth outward and bringing uncertainty back. The patriotic story will later polish these voyages into destiny. From the wet quay they look less certain, crowded, commercial, dangerous and deeply connected to people beyond England's shores. The tide turns beneath you, and with it turns the comfortable myth of an isolated realm. Behind you, the warehouses settle into darkness, their locked doors guarding not isolation, but the evidence of constant exchange. The river mist remains behind you as the road bends inland away from warehouses and foreign sails toward villages, where news arrives slowly and fear travels quickly. By afternoon you hear that riders have passed ahead carrying warrants that local gentlemen are gathering men and that watchfires may be lit before night. No one offers the same explanation twice. Some say rebels have risen over religion, others say rents and enclosures are to blame. A merchant insists foreign agents are involved because merchants enjoy explanations that require distant maps. A shepherd says hungry men need no foreign encouragement. You continue beneath the sky the colour of old pewter. The little dog keeps close now, less interested in hedges than usual. At a crossroads, a wooden post bears a fresh proclamation sealed with the royal arms. Rain has blurred the lower lines, but the warning remains clear enough. Unlawful assemblies must disperse, weapons must be surrendered, and loyal subjects must report suspicious gatherings. The village constable reads it aloud to 6 people, 3 hens, and a boy holding a broken hoop. Royal peace, you begin to understand, requires frequent announcements that peace exists. At the inn, travellers crowd around the hearth. Wet cloaks hang from pegs. A pot of onions and barley simmers over the fire. Voices remain low because every stranger may be an informer, a fugitive, or merely someone who repeats stories badly. The innkeeper removes empty cups slowly so she can hear more. A carter says armed men have gathered near an abbey ruin. A peddler says they carry banners painted with saints. A clerk says the leaders have presented written demands and insist they remain loyal to the king. No one can quite agree how rebellion can declare loyalty while resisting royal officers. Yet Tudor politics often asks people to hold 2 dangerous ideas at once. Those who rise rarely begin by announcing hatred for the crown. They blame wicked councillors, corrupt officials, greedy landlords, false preachers, or men who have hidden truth from the monarch. The king remains imagined as a distant source of justice even when his seal appears on the orders causing anger. Near dusk, a troop of local levies enters the village. They are not gleaming soldiers from a tapestry. They are farmers, craftsmen, servants, and younger sons carrying bows, bills, pikes, and whatever equipment can be gathered. Their boots are muddy. Their ranks drift. One man wears a helmet too large and must tilt his head back to see. A gentleman in a fur-lined cloak tries to arrange them into files. His horse dislikes the inn sign and sidesteps whenever he speaks. Authority suffers when mounted on an animal with independent judgment. The men are ordered to guard the bridge. Some know the supposed rebels. One has a cousin among them. Another owes grain to a man accused of leading the gathering. Loyalty does not divide neatly. It passes through households, debts, parishes, friendships, and old insults. You follow the troop along a lane where villagers have shuttered windows. At the church porch, the parish chest stands open while the priest removes records and wraps them in cloth. He fears fire, seizure, or official search. Beneath the altar steps, someone has hidden a carved saint removed during recent reforms. Some swear the image has wept since it was concealed. The priest says damp stone explains the moisture. He still touches the carving gently before replacing the board. Beyond the village, watchfires glow on a ridge. Each flame carries a message. One warns of strangers, another summons men. Another may simply be a shepherd burning brush, though no official feels calm enough to accept that possibility. Messengers ride between manor houses through darkness. Horses must be changed, letters copied, bridges watched, and rumours tested. A report grows more alarming each time it is summarized. 20 men become 200, farm tools become weapons, a shouted argument becomes a planned assault. Even now it is hard to tell whether the greatest danger lies in the gathering itself or in the frightened imagination of those receiving the reports. At the bridge, the levies wait beneath cold rain. They share coarse-bred smoked fish and weak ale beside a roadside fire. Bowstrings are protected beneath cloaks. Pikes rest against the parapet. No enemy appears. Hours pass. A man tells a quiet joke about rebels refusing to march until someone repairs the road. Another says the road is the Crown's finest defence. The laughter is brief and tired. Near midnight a wagon approaches with one wheel cracked and bound in rope. Everyone grips weapons until the driver raises both hands. He carries sacks of oats and an elderly woman wrapped in blankets. The broken cartwheel from earlier journeys seems to have developed relatives across the kingdom. The soldiers search the wagon, they find grain, a wooden rosary, 2 hens and no conspiracy. The elderly woman tells them that they should be ashamed of frightening poultry in winter. By dawn, official riders arrive with news that the gathering has dispersed after promises of pardon and negotiation. Relief moves through the men, but no one celebrates loudly. Promises may change after names are recorded, pardons may narrow, leaders may be summoned, questioned, imprisoned, or made examples once the roads are secure. Tudor rebellion often ends not in one decisive clash, but in waiting, bargaining, hesitation, selective, punishment and memory. The crown cannot punish everyone without damaging the realm it wishes to control. It cannot forgive everyone without appearing weak. So it chooses delays, investigates, and lets uncertainty perform part of the work. You return toward the village as morning light spreads over wet fields. The watchfires shrink to smoke. Shutters open, carts move again. The market resumes. From a distance, order appears restored. Yet beneath that calm, people remember who spoke, who stayed silent, who carried messages, who joined the march, and who informed the steward. The peace is painted carefully over resentment like fresh colour on damp plaster.
The royal arms still hang above the proclamation. The paper flaps in the wind, half unreadable,
but firmly sealed. You walk beneath it with the dog at your heels, hearing bells from the village and hoofbeats fading toward the manor, while England settles once more into the appearance of obedience. The village bells follow you into a rain-pale morning. Behind you, watchfires fade, doors reopen, and the market begins again. Ahead, the road curves toward the river, then rises across fields, silvered with frost. You have walked through London, mud royal corridors, monastic cloisters, farm kitchens, market stalls, manor courts, enclosed pastures, busy quays, and bridges guarded through uncertain nights. Tudor England now gathers around you, not as one portrait, but as many overlapping lives. The little dog trots beside you, carrying no stolen glove today. At the hilltop you see a landscape fit for a painted panel. Church towers stand above clustered roofs, smoke rises from cottage chimneys, sheep move across pale fields. A manor house catches sunlight on its windows. Farther away the river carries boats toward towns linked to ports, yet you know what lies beneath. You know that a palace depends upon cooks, laundresses, clerks, grooms, messengers, accountants, and servants carrying warm coals through cold passages. Royal authority travels slowly, sealed in wax, copied by ink-stained hands, delayed by rain, distorted by rumour, and interpreted by people thinking about rent supper and weather. You know that the 6 queens are not convenient labels. They are educated, devout, ambitious, frightened, adaptable, politically useful, politically dangerous, and fully human. Their choices unfold inside narrow chambers where every pregnancy, prayer, friendship book, and silence may become evidence. Religious change does not occur in one clean command. It enters through altered prayers, dismantled shrines, inspected relics, vanished libraries, silent bells, and villagers wondering who will feed the poor when the abbey kitchen closes. Some swear reform frees faith from corruption, others mourn old customs. No one can quite agree where conviction ends and profit begins. At a roadside cottage, Alice waves from the doorway. Her children gather behind her, one holding the wooden animal. Martin lifts a hand from the hedge he is repairing. Their table will hold pottage tonight, perhaps with onions, cheese, and a little bacon. It is not a feast, but neither is it empty misery. The family washes, mends, sweeps, brews, sells, learns, argues, plays praise, and counts winter stores. Their lives are demanding, yet not without tenderness. The children work early, but they chase hoops, whisper beneath blankets, collect charms, and receive the softer bread. Alice bargains in public, manages coins, knows grain's value, and keeps the household moving with authority. No royal portrait records. Near the manor green, the old oak drips. The court table is gone, but wheel marks remain. Here quarrels about pigs' wells, wages ale, measures inheritance, and fences become part of law. Justice is unequal, local, bureaucratic, negotiated, and sometimes unexpectedly merciful. It is harsher than the world you know, but less simple than tales of endless dungeons suggest. Beyond the green, new hedges divide common ground. The stakes are straight, the ditch freshly cut, and the resentment older than either. Enclosure promises profit to one household and loss to another. A landlord sees improvement, a widow sees vanished firewood, a shepherd sees more wool and fewer neighbours. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the fallen fence was broken by wind or hands. The empty cottage offers no opinion. The road descends toward the port, where rigging knocks against masts, and foreign words move between warehouses. Imported spice scents the air near bales of English cloth. Sailors trust compasses, saints, stars, charts, and private superstitions in proportions that change with weather. England is not alone. It is tied to distant markets, rival rulers, foreign craftsmen, religious arguments, uncertain voyages, and the restless tide. This is the truth hidden beneath the polished Tudor legend. The age is neither golden nor entirely grim. It is not only Henry standing broad in jewels, nor only an executioner's shadow, nor filthy lanes, starving peasants, silent women, frightened children, or obedient villages. It is contradiction made ordinary. Splendor stands beside debt, devotion stands beside doubt, affection survives beside harsh discipline. Clean linen hangs above foul gutters, bright cloth passes through hands cracked by labor. A monastery shelters travelers, then disappears into lists and locked chests. A queen publishes ideas, then survives by appearing submissive. A rebel claims loyalty. A poor traveller receives suspicion and bread. Even now it is hard to tell whether Tudor England seems unfamiliar because it is distant or familiar because people remain people beneath every hood cap, crown apron and fur-lined cloak. The sun lowers, though the day has felt long enough to contain years. You leave the hill and follow a narrow pilgrim road toward one final shelter. A small chapel stands beside the track, its stone walls worn smooth near the door. Inside, a beeswax candle burns before a faded saint whose painted face has almost disappeared. You sit on a wooden bench. The dog circles twice and settles against your boots. Rain begins softly on the roof. The bell you heard before dawn sounds once in the distance, then once again, slower now. Your cloak dries beside the quiet flame. The smell of wet wool fades into wax, old timber, and cool stone. Outside, the fields darken without hurry. The last cart passes. Its wheels murmur through mud, grow faint, and are gone. You no longer need to hold every name, law rumour, road, or royal face in your thoughts. Let the crowded palace close its oak doors. Let the scribes lay down their quills. Let the market sellers cover their stalls. The sailors tie their ropes. The children settle beneath wool blankets, and the tired monks rest wherever their journeys have carried them. The watchfires become small red points on distant hills. One by one they dim. Nothing follows you into this quiet except the candle's warmth, the steady breathing of the dog, and soft rain travelling over the chapel roof. The cold world remains outside beyond thick stone and darkness. Here the bench supports you. The air is still. The road can wait until morning. The Tudor portraits fade now, their jewels and shadows dissolving into gentle blackness. Behind them remain ordinary hands, ordinary meals, ordinary hopes, and low bells from a country falling asleep. You breathe slowly. The flame bends, steadies, and becomes small. Then the final bell drifts away across the fields, and the long medieval night closes softly around you.